Happy Friday. It is time for 3 questions to better business. I am Michael Davis, your weekly host. Very happy to have my guest today. She was actually recommended to me by my friend Ray, who I've interviewed on this in the past. Her name is Stephanie Salasek. Stephanie, very good to have you with us. And I'm really eager to hear about your topic today. Before we dive into it, give us just a quick overview of what it is specifically you do.
I work in 2 different camps, Michael. There's a lot of overlap, but usually unique clients. On one side, I'm working with a number of faculty members or business leaders who want to improve their public speaking skills. Mm-hmm. I won't say similar to you because I know that you do that at a real high level. And on the other camp, I work with many times C-suite leaders who have excellent business and technical skills. But from the emotional intelligence perspective, the people side, they need some help. So the two interact a lot, but usually pretty unique clients on the public speaking side or the emotional intelligence side.
And that was one of the big idea that attracted me to having you on today. I've read a little bit, enough about emotional intelligence to be really dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think we're all familiar with the term, but I don't really believe, I don't think we know what it really means.
Emotional intelligence is our awareness of our own emotions and others' emotions, and then our ability to use that awareness to manage our relationships with others. So we're aware when we're feeling certain things. We work on our emotional intelligence so we manage those emotions appropriately. And then we pay attention to other people, work to pick up on their emotions, and use that information not to manipulate or to abuse, but to manage effective relationships.
Well, it's funny you say that about not manipulating. I'm a history buff, and I've been reading and listening to some podcasts lately about leaders, dictators in history. You talk about a manipulation of emotions and taking advantage of people when they were down. History is filled with those kind of folks.
Yes.
Fortunately,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think the rebuttal to emotional intelligence is very real. People can have a very strong intellectual understanding of emotional intelligence and use it for bad. Yeah. Similar to an accountant. Accountant can be excellent with numbers, but still commit fraud and embezzle.
No, absolutely.
And intrinsically to emotional intelligence, that shouldn't happen, but there is the ability to use it for bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, history's filled with it. Fortunately, we're not here today to create dictators. Yeah. All right, so let's jump into the first question since you mentioned that. And that is, what is the biggest challenge you see today regarding emotional control?
I think emotional control is, social media. And I know that sounds like a broken record, but so many people are faceless to us now. It used to be you'd hear things like an insurance company or a utility company, it's faceless. Don't worry about it, right? Well, now we're kind of all faceless because we're behind a computer and social media. So we've lost the opportunity too many times to meet people face to face. I always think back to Abe Lincoln's quote, it's not inclusive, but historical. He said, I don't like that man. I need to get to know him better. I think that's the biggest thing missing with emotional intelligence right now is that we don't know people as people. We're not meeting them face to face. We're not finding out about their journey.
Well, I know you also do presentation skills, and I've been working with people on this for 2 years with regard to virtual. I teach them that, face-to-face conversation, if you and I were talking over lunch, all 5 of my senses are engaged.
Yes.
I can see you. I can hear you. I can feel the sense and the temperature in the room. I can smell the food if there's food around, and that triggers the taste buds, actually. Well, on camera, 3 of those are shut down.
Right.
So now we've got these 2, sight and sound, or sight and hearing, are having to do the work of 5, which is exhausting us. And to your point, where it is faceless, even though we're looking at each other's face. I like that term. It's faceless because I'm not getting the same sense of you I would in person. Right. Talk about that a little bit as far as how it relates to this emotional control.
Well, there are 12 competencies. that make up the emotional intelligence that I work with my clients on. And those 12 competencies come from Daniel Goleman's work. Mm-hmm. Empathy is one of those competencies. And I think in the current literature about businesses and organizations, it's the competency that leaders wish their employees had more of. Quick story.
Sure.
My dad was at the University of Iowa hospitals a few years ago for about 3.5 months. He was dying of a blood cancer that had gone to his brain. One November morning that year, I went over for a visit. I took off work and took the 2-hour drive. When I got over there, it was just he and I, and we had a great visit, lots of reminiscing. He even mentioned 2 favorite nicknames of mine, Chipmunk and Skeezix. Well, our visit was cut a bit short. The nurse came in and said it was time for another radiation treatment. Now, my dad didn't have long to live, but Iowa City is a teaching hospital, so there's no giving up. So I took the opportunity. I put him in his wheelchair. I got him on the elevator. I rolled him downstairs to where the radiation treatment would happen, pushed his wheelchair up against the wall, and I leaned down to give him a really tight hug, kind of buried my face in his shoulder. And when I let go, he looked up at me, Michael, and he held his hand up and he said, "Thanks for coming, Stephanie. I really appreciate it." Well, I turned and ran to get in my car as fast as I could so he couldn't see my tears. I got in the car. I got just a little bit west of Iowa City, little town of Tiffin, stopped at an intersection in the middle of town. Gentleman came up from the north in what we in Iowa call a grain truck. He stopped too. But then he rolled down his window, started yelling obscenities at me and sharing some not so friendly nonverbals.
Yes.
Not figure it out. Well, I took a moment and I realized it wasn't a 4-way stop. It was a 2-way stop. And I didn't have a stop sign. So I pushed my way through the intersection and I got back on the road. And I thought to myself, if that man had known that I just left my hero to die in the basement of a teaching hospital, waiting for one more radiation treatment that wouldn't help, would he have felt the need to be so mean? He wouldn't have. Yeah. And I tell this story because when I work with my clients and we're working on emotional intelligence or public speaking, I said, assume every audience member, client, or customer has just had their darkest moment, and you will treat them right and you will show empathy.
Oh, I love that. And it reminds me of a story in Stephen Covey's classic, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He uses a similar example of a woman whose husband had just died or a man whose wife had just passed away. He's on a train with his 7 kids. They're all over the place. They're out of control and people are getting upset with him. And finally somebody approached him. And as soon as he said, I'm really sorry. My wife just passed away and my kids don't know what to do, everybody became his friend and they wanted to help him.
Right.
So empathy is so powerful. And in this technological COVID stressed out world that we're in, we're all on hyperdrive. And it seems like that skill is the one that's toughest right now.
Yes. Yeah. But when you stop just to think, that person that's frowning in my audience or that client that missed my Zoom call, just assume something horrible happened. And if it didn't, that's great, but you'll be a lot more kind and empathic.
Oh yeah. And I know as a speaking trainer and coach, you appreciate this. I've tried to teach my speakers over the years, look, people in front of you are going to react to you in ways you don't expect or upset you. They might fall asleep. They might be looking at their phones. Don't make it all about you. Maybe they've got a sick kid at home and they wanted to be here today and are doing the best they can, but they're worried about a babysitter or they got a sick dog, whatever it is. We don't know. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah. And you may do this too, Michael. I like to tell my clients too, don't get too much bravado over the person who has the bobblehead and they're smiling either. Because those folks may have, we don't know, just gotten a raise, a big promotion. Right? So kind of on the opposite side of the continuum, don't assume it's all about you either.
I've never said that to somebody, but I love that point, and I'll start to, because it's like, don't go to the opposite end. You're not as great as everybody makes you think you are.
Right.
I've always told people, look, you got to have an ego to stand on stage and speak. Yeah. However, on the other side of that coin is the fact that if you weren't there, somebody else would be.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Now, since you mentioned empathy, that leads me to the second question, which you've kind of already answered, but we're going to dive a little deeper into it. And that is, what are the two emotional intelligence competencies that you spend most of your time dealing with your clients?
Thank you. Well, I'll just use a specific client. So if I'm working with potentially a CFO or another leader in an organization who high on the technical and business skills, but needs work on the emotional intelligence, probably empathy and adaptability.
Okay.
Sometimes subject matter experts just have blinders on for what the rest of their community is going through, and just a lack of awareness. We continue the behavior that we're rewarded for. So if I'm an accountant and I've been rewarded and promoted and given opportunities based on my accounting skills and never rewarded for being able to manage people or building bridges or managing conflict, then I have no practice with that.
Right.
And so a lot of it is adaptability, but also even one of the competencies for emotional intelligence is conflict management. That one I work with clients a lot on too, particularly if they're not used to being assertive. They're either passive or passive aggressive or maybe aggressive. We work on conflict management a lot. Now, when it comes to public speaking, many of my clients are professors, faculty members, people who are the best in their field, but maybe haven't been in front of an audience since they had undergrad classes, maybe early in their tenure.
Right.
For those audiences, empathy is also one, and adaptability too. They get very frustrated if somebody's cell phone goes off or if someone comes in late. They internalize it way too much. So it's kind of with the 12 competencies, always using a little bit of them with all my clients, some just a little bit more than others.
Well, based on what you said, would it be fair to say that the other 11 are rooted in or need empathy to be most effective?
I believe so.
Okay.
I have a good friend, Callista Gould, who works with teams on dining etiquette. And she said something that has resonated with me for so long since I heard it. Dining etiquette is not about rules, policies, procedures. It's about caring about your audience, caring about the people that you're eating with. I think about that with public speaking. Emotional intelligence is about caring about your audience. And a big part of that is empathy. It's not about rules and I have to follow this and this is what EI is. It's about, okay, if I manage and do these competencies well, I take care of my customer, I take care of my audience.
I love that you pointed that out. I'm very fortunate. Early on in my speaking career, I had great mentors who I still have today, and they taught me this concept that you've got to be there for your audience. And that means when the power goes out, somebody drops a tray, somebody interrupts you, doesn't matter. Do not be a jerk. Okay? Right. It's not about you. And people can smell the speaker who's up there. It's all about them. And unfortunately, they're still too prevalent. It's getting better with some good coaching, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's understanding that some of them may not even want to be there. They were told to. The ones that are there are so intimidated by you being on stage. Just the fact that you're there, they think, oh my God, you're awesome. I work every year with Cincinnati TEDx, and at the TEDx Women this past year, I had 3 women who are good, but a bit intimidated by the whole event. Mm-hmm. So I sat down with them. I said, look, you got to understand something. You're about to speak to 500 people who are literally in awe of you. Yes. Not because of your message, but because you had the guts to stand on that red dot and speak.
Right.
I said, everything else is a bonus. Just keep that in mind. You're scared to death, but they are literally holding you in such high esteem just for doing that.
Yeah, it's true.
And that is a responsibility.
Right. It is all about taking care of that audience. And I in the name of emotional intelligence, Michael, people have to slow down to observe human nature. And what's their burning platform to do that? Well, hopefully they feel like there are going to be opportunities at work, or it's going to improve their personal life. But it's tough to get good with emotional intelligence if you aren't paying attention to human behavior. And I say in jest, but it's true. I grew up the biggest kid in my class, and I was the youngest one, which made it double trouble. I had a perm that shouldn't happen, never picked to play a game at recess. I had a lot of time on the sidelines. And when you continue practicing observing people, you start to improve your emotional intelligence. But it does take commitment. And you have to have some burning platform. Hopefully it's not the boss saying you're going to lose your job.
That's what got me into public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
My boss said, your presentation skills suck.
You had a burning platform. Yep.
You fix this or else. It's what got me into Toastmasters in 1994. And thank goodness he did. He pushed me out of my comfort zone. By the way, do you have a story that's called Sidelines? Because the storyteller in me is thinking, that's a story you got to tell. I'm sure you have.
Well, I always remember my third grade story, Michael, when I grew up in Fairfield, Iowa, a little town in the southeast corner of the state. We'd gone on a field trip to a local factory, made washers and dryers. Tour was over. We were lined up, little yellow school bus waiting outside, teachers doing a head count. Young man, John Grunwald, classmate, got to the front of the line and said, how about we get Stephanie on the freight scale before we go and see how much she weighs? That today, I remember it with a tinge of pain, Michael. But I also do throw his real name out there, so there's no witness protection. But those experiences tie into the whole emotional intelligence. It's the Maya Angelou, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
That is so true. As you, I'm sure, practice with all your clients, right? They got to feel good about your message. If you get them upset or angry or hurt them, that's what they'll remember, not your content.
Yeah, it's all about respecting your audience. I also, on the other hand, teach them, and our job as speakers is not to make people feel great or good all the time, because we want them to change a behavior.
Yes.
And they ain't changing if they feel 100%, oh, hey, she just reaffirmed everything I'm doing, and I'm staying in this pocket of mediocrity.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
So
right.
there
Now,
is
I appreciate that qualification. And I think it's, not calling out the person whose cell phone went off or came in late or asked one too many questions, those kinds of things, as opposed to their understanding or agreement with the content.
Yeah. And if you have thin skin and you're there for your own reasons, if a phone goes off, and I know one of our attendees, Mitra, I'll mention a couple of her comments in a moment, she's done humor. Just make it funny. Oh, please hold all my calls. Tell the president I'm busy right now. Yeah. Have fun with it. You bring audiences to your side when you do that.
That's one of my, now I know I may not promote the right books, but this is one of my favorite new books, Humor Seriously. And I'm giving it to my public speaking clients. I think in the name of humor, although humor experts can say different, to be funny, you have to be fun. So I encourage my clients to practice some fun in their daily life, so that they're observing what makes people laugh and what works, and then incorporating that more into their presentations.
Okay, that's the third time in 2 weeks I've seen that book.
Really?
Now I'm getting it. I don't have a choice.
Yep. Well, and this one too, since we're on the topic, Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Yes, I do have that one. Okay. I need to go back over it. It's been a while. So we've talked about these competencies, and you may have touched upon it, but let's just dive a little bit deeper. Which one of these is the most difficult for your clients to work on?
Well, I hate to be a broken record, but it really is the empathy. Although I will step back and say, sometimes it's clear back to self-awareness. You have to know, is anybody telling you in a meeting that you cut somebody off, or that you were quick to anger when your idea didn't sail through, or you tended to check out when somebody else was sharing their ideas? If you're not aware, it's kind of like the first step to the healing process. If you're not aware of your emotions, then that sometimes can be the most difficult. Right now, where we are with social media and our polarized society, self-control, big one.
Yeah.
You gotta refrain. And I think about if your neighbor says something on social media, it's so easy to decide I like them or I don't like them, right? But if you choose not to like them based on the fact that maybe their opinions are very different than yours and their political affiliations are different, but if you go over and shovel their walk and you have a conversation with them, it changes everything. It doesn't mean you're best friends or that you're going to lean their way or that you're going to be like, but all of a sudden they're a human. So that self-control that doesn't happen much on social media is
Mhm.
a big one for emotional intelligence that's tough for some clients to manage.
Well, to me, it gives insight into the person reading it who thinks either that's a personal attack,
Yes.
which there's some insecurity issues there, I think, or if you respectfully listen to that person, they're going to change your mind.
Yes.
No, that's not what it means at all.
That
But
can happen. No.
that's at least that's how it appears to me. People are approaching it, and if again, I think that comes back to some self-esteem issues or self-worth. It's like it's okay if you have an opinion too. It doesn't mean yours is better or worse than the other ones.
No. Well, and just seeing the whole person, and that's a big part of emotional intelligence. It's wow, there's a lot to everybody that we meet or interact with on a daily basis. So much more than what we're obsessing about that we think that they believe or that they posted, or just getting beyond that and finding the common areas is a big part of emotional intelligence. Uh, yes.
Yeah, and I always look for opportunities of people who exhibit the ability to be different in one area and still have good relationships. And I think back to the Democratic strategist James Carville and his wife, was it Mary Matlin, I think. She worked in the Bush administration. You can't get more diametrically opposed, but they apparently are a great couple.
Mhm.
I think they're
Yes.
still together. But I
Yeah.
mean, and they were very public about their differences politically, but also the ability to say, hey, that's not who we are. It's what we do and believe, but we're still a couple who loves each other. And apparently, from what I could see, they had a strong marriage.
Yes. Yes. So much more to the people. In our tribal society right now, I think there's such a fear sometimes, and this all relates to emotional intelligence, of losing our tribe. So if we get to know that other person, then is our tribe going to still accept us? And we have to get past that. And even though emotional intelligence isn't about kindness, one of the competencies is a positive outlook. And of course, empathy implies kindness and teamwork and all of those. We've got to get back to just genuine kindness for others. One of my favorite lines, I used to have a supervisor when I worked at Iowa State University who would say, and we would say together, 100 years from now, all new people.
I love that one. I've heard it
Right?
before.
So, oh my gosh, how much time can we spend thinking that we've got all the answers when 100 years from now, not even one of our answers may sustain? So that's a reason to work on the emotional intelligence and get to know people as human beings.
If we're lucky, there will
Well,
be one person alive who remembers us in some
yes.
way,
Yeah.
unless we're George Washington or somebody like
Sure,
that.
sure. And
You kind of cut out there. What was the
no, I
last
said
thing you
you
said?
may be that next George Washington who leaves a legacy.
Who knows? We
Yeah.
don't know. Hey, we had some good comments. Mitra, going back to the whole concept of empathy, says that that's why poor people give more to others, because they know how it feels to have nothing.
Yeah.
I would say I agree with that, with the exception being I've met some people who are extremely successful today, but came from very poor roots and were some of the best givers I ever met, because
Yeah.
they also remembered. And Rich Hopkins, who's a world-class speaker, he says he loves Callista. So he knows
Oh,
Callista.
terrific. I'm glad to give her a shout out. She's just an awesome person. Yes.
And you told me about Callista before we started. I'm going to have her on a future episode. If she wants to come on, I would love to talk with her.
Terrific.
Just a whole different topic about
She's a gem.
business etiquette, dining etiquette. So, and then
No, you never had me and you just had her, Michael.
there you go. Mitra says competence, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. I love that comment, because so much of what we experience in life, we react to through our own filter.
Right. Yeah.
It is so vital to stop for a moment. And it's a hard habit to develop, but to say, wait a minute, that person did or said this. I don't know their circumstance, like we were referring to earlier.
Yeah. And I think, I don't really think of myself, and I think my husband would concur. I'm not really a nice person. But now that might sound counterintuitive to all my
Okay.
work with emotional intelligence, because, I don't know if you grow up like a heavy girl that's left out of a lot of things and not have a little sarcastic side and, a little inner bitterness. I work hard to do nice, kind things on a daily basis, because if I'm busy enough doing that, I can't tap into that maybe little sarcastic, bitter side. But I have to say, and I pull up here, never underestimate the value of cookies. And I'm not saying anything elementary or unsophisticated, but I love to send cookies to my clients, and not just as a thank you, hope we can do business again, but maybe they show up in 6 months as a reminder to the content that we covered. Or I don't necessarily just send it to my meeting planner person or my hiring person, but 2 or 3 of the participants. I also bake a lot too. If I can get to the destination, I drop stuff off. But I believe heavily in the value of learning emotional intelligence, but it takes time. And if I spend 12 weeks with the client, that's still really an event. It's going to take months for it to be a habit. And so I'm kind of always close by, either bringing food and talking about it, or sending links to articles or books that show up at their door, or anything that you can touch, feel, smell, taste, to remind them and continue the learning process.
Yeah, if we can re-engage those 5 senses in today's world, that alone will help establish that connection.
Yes, definitely.
I was listening to a presentation today by a speaker, and he was talking about how organizations they're desperate to do live events again, even on a smaller scale, because people want that reconnection. They want that tribal communal feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, you are awesome, and I appreciate your time today. Now, if anybody wants to do a deeper dive with you, I have included your contact information. Your company is Lookup Communications.
Yeah.
Look up at StephanieSalasek.com, or they can also go to StephanieSalasek.com, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Do you have any kind of like tips or anything you can offer on your site?
Well, you know what? There are some things, if they reach out to me, that I can send to them. So please don't hesitate. Look up at StephanieSalasek.com. I will send you information, a PDF on some tips I have for audience etiquette. I do encourage the book, The Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And one of the biggest reasons is, if you're new to emotional intelligence, there's a link and a unique code right inside the cover where you can take a self-assessment and just get kind of a first idea of your level of awareness of emotional intelligence.
Okay, and Tom Hobbs just put in, the good chocolate chip cookie smell is powerful. Yes, because that is the strongest. They say that is the strongest scent. What am I trying to say here? It is the strongest of the 5 senses. Okay, I was missing scent and sense. I'm having one of those moments. I'm at that point in life. As a quick reminder to everyone, storytelling is the heart of great presentations. If you would like to improve your stories, feel free to sign up. No cost or obligation you for 52 storytelling tips. You can go to my virtual business card, and the information for this will be below the video too. It's infone, not iPhone, infone.co/speaking CPR. That'll take you to this page that looks like a phone. Just click on the 52 storytelling tips, and you can sign up for your weekly 5-minute lesson. The idea behind these is to build one skill on top of another over an entire year. Coming soon to a live stream near you. Now, my background's in the financial world, and I know how important it is, especially this time of year, to start looking at financial issues, taxes, big changes that Congress has every year. Joining me will be a gentleman, Bill Hasse. I know Bill because I was a guest on one of his podcasts, and we're going to talk about key financial questions to ask yourself in 2022. Join us for that, same time, same station. Stephanie, again, I appreciate you so much in the work you're doing. Hopefully we'll have other conversations, and definitely look forward to talking with Callista. Hopefully we'll have her on.
Terrific. Thank you, Michael, very much.
Great to have you with us. Have a great weekend.